everyone. This is I, Flamingo Writer here, and welcome to another edition of Flamingo's Literary Podcast. Now, folks, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm a very awkward person. I know some people are going to think that's pretty weird to say, but chances are a lot of us are going to be having those weird moments with us every now and then. But to give you an idea of how weird I am, sometimes I want to talk about fantasy. Yeah, this is one case where I think a lot of people would actually enjoy the genre. If you haven't already guessed already, fantasy comes in many different forms, whether it's urban fantasy, dark fantasy, high fantasy, or basically whatever kind of fantasy you can come up with. As long as you actually can make up your own rules and such, you won't have that much of a problem with it by any means though. But I'm saying this as in somebody who, for the most part, loves fantasy. Because personally, there's a lot to love about this particular genre. Like, even if you could make the argument this is basically something that you can make believe on your own, it's still something that you can still enjoy for yourself. Like, there's no rules to tell people what to do and all that stuff for your own value. But if you're creative enough, you can pretty much make your own world, though. Take my instincts though, for example, when it comes to fantasy, you can pretty much bet there's a lot of things you can do with fantasy if you actually have the creative mind for it, though. I mean, sure, I know some people are gonna think that I'm kind of weird and all that stuff, though, but to be fair, I prefer more weird than, say, creepy, because quite honestly, I mean, that's something that I'm sure a lot of us went through in our own self, though, like it or not, because as a kid, I really had those moments. Like the poetry beforehand for the episode of the podcast, I really had a lot of people going up in arms about my own self. I was very stifled. I didn't really have that much people to work with and such. And what's more, I was pretty much alone all the time whenever it comes to my creativity. I didn't really have that much people to share it unless they want to hear what I have in store for my own expertise. But fantasy aside, though, it's really something that you can pretty much make up along the way, though. As long as you're not doing anything that's, well, not exactly what I was hoping for, but it does show signs of what can happen when it can be a little too far for its own self, though. As such, let's go into the public domains of fantasy. Now, I myself know for the remainder of this year episode, while I am going to be talking about what fantasy I've read so far, that doesn't mean I haven't seen any adaptations of this fantasy. I mean, if you've seen many works of fantasy, you already know what you're getting into. And as such, it really comes as no surprise that a lot of the times we can pretty much do whatever we can with those here works. At least that's when it comes right down. And when it comes right down to it, though, there's a lot you can do with a lot of this fantasy when it comes right down to it, though. I mean, sure, some people could make the argument that, yeah, you can do pretty much whatever you want with the genre, sure, but it's also where you can make up your own rules and do whatever you want with it. Express your imagination, express your own freedom with it. I mean, as someone who's actually read and also seen a lot of fantasy stuff, that should come as no surprise, though. But to give you an idea of what all of these fantasies I just said, I mean, we need to go a little more in depth with them, if you know what I'm saying. Now, to be fair, I will admit some of them do have that structure, but you can pretty much bet there's a fantasy as such use already. But let's get this out. Fantasy, they usually use supernatural setting around oneself, though. Like, say, for example, if you want to do something that's, say, aside from a lot of this stuff, though, urban fantasy, there's more to it than what could have been, though. Or take it like a video game. Video games have a lot of urban fantasy where they can do natural stuff as much as they want to, though. And honestly, that shows a lot more things that you can do with it instead of just saying, yeah, that's What is though? Like, let's say for this, for example, urban fantasy. While I haven't seen a ton of them, I will admit I think the one time I've actually seen something like this was probably in a series called American Dragon Jake Long, a series that, well, I have seen a lot as a kid. It's been a while since I've last seen a show on Disney Channel, but I know some people are gonna say to me it's not on Disney Channel anymore if they have cable. But honestly, I still I don't mind as such though. Or how about say dark fantasy? Now, dark fantasy, while I admit that is something that not a lot of people will come to point out, though, I still think that you can do pretty much whatever you want with dark fantasy because there's a lot you can do with that. I mean, I myself, while my series may sound lighthearted with the title, yes, in Wattpad's case, it does sound like a lighthearted title. It's really a dark fantasy that I want to come across on that. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, dark fantasy basically means you take a lot of these dark elements and make them into a dark place. As such, like say, let's say a movie, for example, like say The Black Cauldron. The Black Cauldron, and written by written by. Hold on a sec. I have to look up. Yeah, it's actually based on a book, if anything else, though. It's just too bad that when I start seeing that movie for myself, it's just really sad. The movie almost killed Disney animation. Yeah, honestly, though, I'm not kind of. It's not surprised though, because this was during the time when Disney was having its dark age. Not necessarily just by appearance, but because of how much things went through hell in the process, though. But that doesn't mean you can't do any any dark fantasy for yourself. I mean, let's be honest though. You can pretty much bet there's gonna be like dragons and some sword fighting and stuff like that. Which honestly though, you can do pretty much whatever you want with it as such though. And honestly, that gives a lot of closure, if anything, to judge by, though. I mean, sure, some people could make the argument that dark fantasy does have those Fairy moments, but I don't want to say that isn't someone who had to do that already, though. I mean, let's be honest, though. The reason why we all know dark fantasy is hard to write, though, is mostly because of its execution. And honestly, the execution from The Black Cauldron can be a lot better if they had the right material, and what's more, if they actually read the books. Yeah, they did do some things with the books of The Black Cauldron, but it doesn't really seem like they had a lot going for it as is, though. Which is all the more tragic when you realize this was actually one of the box office bombs of Disney. Though admittedly, the Disney itself, despite it being, well, hit or miss nowadays, and before you say anything, no, I haven't seen Wish, if you're going to ask about that. No, one thing that really gets to me about Disney is that I think this is actually where I got my own structure of fantasy when it starts to writing. So you're probably wondering, as you suggest, Flamingo, since you're always writing all the time, what made you get into fantasy? Or in this case, what got you into doing something like that? Well, anybody remember Peter Pan, the 1953 version? Yeah, I'm only saying the 1953 version because I'm gonna say I don't have plans on watching live action remakes. Yeah, some people could make the argument that they're supposed to recapture Disney, but I don't like recapturing Disney just by making live action remakes. I mean, let's be honest though, these live action remakes are, shall we say, unnecessary. Yeah, there are some that maybe people could want to grow to watch, but I personally always prefer the animated version, if nothing else, though. And if you like these live action movies, don't get me wrong, you can still like something that I don't like in particular. There are tons of stuff that I don't like that some of my friends like, and that's really what I have to say for itself, though. Of course, Peter Pan, while it was adapted from the book by Jim Barry, I still think they did a lot with it as well, though. That said, however, I don't really think a lot of people would take me seriously when I say this, though. See, for those who are gonna ask, though, Peter Pan was one of those books that, while I have expressed myself for watching it though, I really didn't get to see a whole lot of my own free will when it comes to watching this year's series of the books itself, though. Yeah, I have seen the first movie, if anything to judge by, but it's also worth pointing out that I haven't read the book. And what I can hear from my audience, if they read the book, it's a little different from what Disney is. But honestly, I'm not surprised in the slightest because that's what Disney does. They like to put twists and turns here. And if you don't like that idea, I'm not going to judge you for that. But I will say, though, it does show things of what fantasy can do for itself. But when it comes right down to fantasy, I personally think that Peter Pan was actually what got me into my writing, though. Yeah, some people could say it's a weird choice, but I'd argue that everyone has a weird way of starting their own freedom and their free will to imagine what they can, though. Excuse me. But what really gets to me about fantasy is also for how much it can get to you, though. Sometimes even the moral lessons in fantasies can also improve on now when it gets right down to it, though. I mean, okay, look, if you don't like any of fantasy, I'm not gonna take that away from you. But what I am saying is that you shouldn't really have to say to people that you have to do this or have to do that or have to do so already, though. You can pretty much express however you want if you want anything to judge by, though. What I can tell you is that the most I've seen out of your fantasy is that most of the time it really depends on the execution. Like, let's say this though. I know I'm gonna be doing that Flamingo's bad writings, although I'm gonna call it Dark Flamingo's writing rants or something like that. Be on the lookout for that because I'm gonna be doing that as soon as I get maybe more votes for my Flamingo rants, because I want to do something else for my series. So in the meantime, while there are 16 votes and I do have to see if there's more coming up, I still have yet to see if I have more coming up, though. So be on the lookout for that. So as I was saying, though, when it comes to writing things about fantasy, I would not do it like High Guardian Spice. Yeah, remember that travesty? I apologize in advance if you get the memories back from what I've said, though. If you somehow don't know about High Guardian Spice, well, take a plot from, say, a series that you're doing to go to a academy and write it as such that nothing really matters to most of the people around it. Yeah, High Guardian Spice. Okay, I'm just gonna say this right here and now. High Guardian Spice is not something that any of us should say it's a good show. Hell, anyone who's actually seen High Guardian Spice, like I have, even though I will be watching it again for preparations of a video, I don't like what they've done there. Jesus Christ, 1.5 out of 10. Thank God. Let's see. Well, listen. That is compared to that. Never. We score 1.6. I don't know what to say about that. It's at least. But yeah, I mean, let's be honest though. You can do pretty much whatever you want with your fantasy show as much as you want to, though. High Guardian Spice, while I will be addressing what I will out of that video soon enough, though, I just wanted to tell you guys about my thoughts on fantasy, though, and how you can write it, how can you make believe in yourself, and how can you imagine it, because let's be honest though, fantasy, you can pretty much make up your own rules as you go along, and there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you actually are consistent with your tone of rules and everything. You won't have that much of a problem with it, though. As such, though, while this wasn't really as long as I hoped it would have, though, I really do hope and pray that this is a video that I was hoping to do for a literary podcast. And to be fair, I know some people are going to say this isn't what they were hoping to have, but chances are I don't know when the next podcast will be. Yeah, I do apologize if my series keeps jumping all over the place, but I really wanted to do more with these writings. So if you ever see any more videos get deleted, that's why. So without further ado, thank you all so much for listening to this podcast, and if you have any questions, don't be afraid to leave them in the comment section, and I'll catch you along the way. So as always, stay fantastic, and be sure to like and subscribe for more content, and yeah, see you later, everybody.